everyone is speaking out about this as JT Miller is facing massive fan backlash for his lack of effort and his body language as of late. And we're going to break down exactly what's going on with the Rangers captain.
Both of these guys, Sullivan and JT Miller, are under contract for the next 5 seasons. Do you believe that's the right head coach captain combination? Because I've heard a lot of Rangers fans talk about Vincent Trocheck and others. Do you believe that Sullivan and JT Miller is the right combination, not only for success this season, but for the foreseeable future?
That's a great question. I will swerve and avoid it. No, I'm just kidding. I think that I'll take the first part or one person over the other first. So I'll talk about JT Miller. I know that you mentioned last night in the Vegas Golden Knights beat them. He called himself out. He said sometimes you got to look in the mirror and kind of look at yourself and think, hey, I've got to do better. I like that. And I remember when he was, when Vancouver was going through that mess that they were a season ago, and that's another topic for another day. And the whole thing was, well, are they going to get rid of Elias Pettersson or are they going to try to get rid of JT Miller? And they decided to trade JT Miller, which at the end of the day, I don't think was the right move for Vancouver, but I loved it for the fact that JT Miller is now a member of the Rangers. I think he's built to be a captain. I think he's built to be a captain, not just on the ice, but off the ice as well. Now, bring in Mike Sullivan to this. What I always think about with whoever wears the C in the league, and also just a side note too with that, I know how historically you have a captain in the league, and every team has a captain. I really don't think that the C is as big of a deal as it used to be in the league. And what I mean by that is, that's with all due respect to anybody who wears the captaincy, but I do think there's so many leaders within the team. It's like leading by committee. So yeah, you got to put the C on somebody, that's fine. But back to what I was going to say about Sullivan. I hope that Sullivan is the right coach. I don't know if he is, to be honest with you. And it's not like he is, I don't have any intel with this. And, I've talked to him and the rest of the team, and the team doesn't see eye to eye with him. But I just think with specifically JT and Sully, I don't know if that's going to end up being a couple of heads butting each other off and on for the next number of seasons. And that going to maybe translate into not a lot of success on the ice. They're under contract, as you mentioned. If I were to keep one, I know you didn't ask me, but if I were to keep one or the other, I would absolutely keep JT outside of Mike Sullivan. Now, that's with all due respect to Sully. I don't envy these coaches because coaching is very tough. And coaching, for me, they make their most money in how to manage egos and how they manage the roster. It's one thing to go out and tell these guys how to practice. You don't have to practice, really. You're in the NHL. You kind of tweak things, that's fine. But to manage egos and manage the room, I think that's important. I don't know. I don't know if he's the right fit, Sullivan is, for the Rangers. Again, this is so early on in his tenure. Only time will tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Ryan. I mean, I do have to ask one follow-up, Darius, because I thought something that was fascinating, what you said there was, JT Miller over Mike Sullivan. And I will give just a little bit of pushback there because, watching this team last year with Peter Laviolette compared to Mike Sullivan, Mike Sullivan obviously coached some of the best, in the world, some of the best to ever play the game. And the Rangers, a lot of their best players are older, Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, some of these guys. And, Panarin has been one of the best players in the league as well for, a lot of years now. So Sullivan, I believe, is the right guy to kind of manage those egos like you were alluding to. But one last thing I want to bring up on JT Miller, since you brought it up there, is, I don't know if he's playing injured or what it is, but, just watching that game last night against the Golden Knights, you see period 2 kind of gives up on the play, in the defensive zone, and then the Vegas Golden Knights convert it into a goal, giving them a 2-0 lead. And, I don't know if he's hurt, like I said, or if he's butting with Mike Sullivan already this early into their tenure. I don't want to cause any type of beef that's, non-existent, but, his effort just doesn't seem to be there.
I work with someone who knows JT personally. And when the whole mess was starting last season in Vancouver, we were talking quite a bit, off the air. And sometimes I've had him on different shows and stuff. He can only share certain things, which obviously makes sense on a personal note. But he told me that JT Miller takes things so personally and he takes them to heart. And yes, there are some things that how he's handled himself on the ice has not been the best. I think a lot of players are guilty of that in any sport. It just happens. It's human nature. But then also how he's handled different things off the ice as well. So putting that aside, you make a great point about that play, for example, and maybe he is a bit injured at this point. There's so many injuries going around in the NHL. But here's the thing. If there's one or two specific plays in a game that are highlighted for the wrong reasons, and they either lead to a goal or they lead to a great chance by the opposition, you have to look at yourself. And again, optics don't lie. If there's video evidence, they don't lie. We see what we see, and we only can assume and think what actually is going on. Again, I don't know. I just have a feeling it's just whatever it is, gut, that potentially I think he's okay. I think maybe he's nursing a bit of an injury. But at the end of the day, it's going to be how he handles himself, at least for 60 minutes every game. And there's going to be some bumps. There's going to be some bumps. And there's going to be some butting heads. There is. That always happens with a captain. And again, back to what I was saying about JT as an individual, he will butt heads with teammates. He'll butt heads with coaches. He'll butt heads with management. Doesn't mean that he doesn't want to compete and doesn't want to play and doesn't want to lead. It's kind of the personality that human being is.
That's why coming into this season, you make a great point that I actually thought he was going to be a great captain and should have been the captain of this team because he is the way that he is. Agreed. Right? Like it holds other people accountable, whether it's coaches and your teammates, right? So he was always my pick for captain. I think that's what makes him great. You have performances like last night sometimes, and I feel like there's players all around the league that are guilty of that, right? But at least he came out after the game and said, hey, I got to look in the mirror. I got to be better. And we'll see what they do in Colorado.
I really like that. I really like that. When you can take accountability for yourself, and if you do something that you're not happy with, you can maybe be calling out the players as you're calling out yourself, but take responsibility for it. If you stunk, you stunk. If you know that you can be better, and to your point too, that's a real good message that he is sending to the rest of the team. He didn't have to do that. He could say, oh, we didn't play well, or we. He said I, and I really appreciated that.
You spoke about body language, and it just triggered something in me about JT Miller once again, because, like Darius, I wanted JT Miller to be captain of this team. It was close between JT Miller and Trocheck, but I really wanted JT to be the captain of this team. And, his body language last night, his body language as of late has me ticked off, has a lot of fans ticked off. And I wondered if, okay, maybe he's injured. I'm sure he is dealing with something. Like you said, a lot of guys in the league, it's a very, grueling league, are dealing with some type of ailment. But I wonder if that body language is now starting to stem from the fact that, the guy has 10 points in 21 games so far this. You spoke about EP before, Pettersson, how, great of a start he's been off to. And, JT, he's been less than a half point per game player. This is a guy that's notorious for being a point per game player. So I wonder if that production is starting to leak into his body language. And, you spoke about the home record before, and maybe if the Rangers had a few more road games, they'd find themselves in the postseason. But I also believe that, and JT, to his credit, alluded to this last night in the post game, but, maybe if JT were executing a bit more, the Rangers would find themselves in a postseason spot. They'd find themselves in a much better spot. To quote him, he said, a hell of a lot better spot if he were producing. So, JT Miller, like I said, what are your thoughts on Vincent Trocheck? I love what I've seen from Vincent Trocheck so far this season. He's looked great since coming back. Do you believe that, maybe you would have went a different direction, maybe give Vincent Trocheck the C? I know you said the C doesn't mean as much nowadays.
No one wears the C. That's it in my league. I'm kidding.
Well, the Rangers, everybody was wearing the A at one point. So
That's right.
It's good to see somebody wearing the C. But would you have maybe opted for a Trocheck or somebody like that, or do you still stick with JT as your guy for the C?
Back to what I said about JT as an individual and what I've gotten to know through someone about him, he wears his emotions on his sleeve, and you will be able to tell and see if there's something bothering him. What he does inside the room, what he does, outside the locker room, what he does outside the arena, how he does whatever he does with texting or calling his players, his teammates and whatever communication he has, that is what he does. I think one of the biggest things that he should do, and you make a great point about the lack of production. It's one thing to be a captain. When you wear that C, you're the leader of that team, and you can talk the team up, talk the team down. You can do whatever you need to do, but you have to produce on the ice. And to his credit, as he said, look, I'm not doing that. And he's gripping the stick a lot tighter. He's tense. Every player in this league, if they're going through a slump, they look as stiff as can be. They do. But when you're more relaxed, the game comes easier to you. But let's just throw that out too, as I'm just thinking off the top of my head. JT is a good hockey player. Is he a great hockey player compared to some of the greats? No, he's not up there, but he's a good hockey player. But I think what he needs to do is keep it simple. Go back to the basics with him and focus in on not trying to go out every night and put up 3, 4, 5 points, something like that. I mean, that's not doable. Only McDavid seems to be able to do that. Well, some of the other guys now in the league. But don't put too much pressure on yourself, because that's when trouble happens. You mentioned Trocheck. Love the guy. Always have. I'm going to stick with JT. It's easy when kind of you look at body language a quarter of the way into the season. Maybe it's the wrong decision and the wrong person for the captaincy. Everybody leads in different ways. The thing to me which makes a captain great, yes, I will keep the C on the 32 teams. I'm good with that. Don't worry. The thing with me, what makes a great captain for me is how the team can respond to you and how they play off you. So if JT, look, I'll send a message to him. Relax a bit. Take a step back, not in your play. Don't take as much pressure and put it on yourself. The rest of the team will feed off that. If they look at you differently than what they see right now, as you mentioned, Bret, about seeing the body language, it's not very good. I think the play will be indicative of that and it'll improve. But I'm a huge fan of Trocheck. I'm glad you brought him up. Huge fan of his.